You're tuning in to Barski-Lyn Adventures. Welcome to our little corner of the bookish community. Hello, beautiful people of the Hello, beautiful people of the bookish persuasion. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about reading, writing, and publishing. I'm C.H. Lynn. With me, as always, is my amazing. I already said amazing. I need to pull up some adjectives.
Pulchritudinous. It means beautiful.
My pulchritudinous. Okay, let me do that again. With me, as always, is my pulchritudinous co-host,
Tracy Barski.
Tracy Barski.
I like how you took a really complicated, fancy long word and turned it into...
Does it not sound southern to you? Pulchritudinous.
Well, it does when you say it like that.
What? Pulchritudinous? Is that...
Pulchritudinous. No, I mean, it's a weird
I don't
word.
think I'd be capable of saying it without throwing a southern accent on it.
It's a weird word.
It
sounds gross.
Pulchritudinous.
It means beautiful, and it sounds gross.
I mean, that's fun, too. Anyway, we're readers, writers, mothers, and wives, and we're here today discussing character creation / development, specifically because you, Tracy, had a meeting today, had a meeting with somebody who specializes in different character creation. Is that right?
I don't know if... I mean, that's sort of what she's established herself doing recently.
Okay.
But it's because she was somewhat of an expert on Enneagram.
Right. Can you do a quick explanation for those who don't know what is Enneagram?
The Enneagram is a personality test or personality
it's like a quiz thing, questionnaire. It's a questionnaire.
I mean, it is. That's how you find out what you are. But it's a set of numbers, 1 through 9, and they each are a category of personality, which kind of cropped up in the last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Was something that I kind of was resistant to initially because I don't put like a ton of stock in personality tests.
There have been a lot in the past that are like, you're one of the 4 Hogwarts houses. Which one are you? And it's like, well, that's not actually how you...
I love that you put the Myers-Briggs on a level with Harry Potter houses, which I think is really funny.
Is that not accurate?
I mean, it kind of
feels a little accurate.
It feels that way. I didn't put much stock in Myers-Briggs because I struggled to be categorized. I take it multiple times and it's always a different answer.
Yep.
So
same thing with the Harry Potter houses.
Yeah. So Enneagram, even though there's elements of it that can be really broad, it's also really has been very incredibly accurate for me personally.
And for like friends and family.
And several people that I know.
It was weirdly accurate when I did it. I don't put stock in any of those, but I at one point did it, and we were both like,
made her.
We were both like, oh yes, adventurous wanderer. That feels, that's accurate. Yep. I'm number 7, by the way,
and I'm an Enneagram 9. So.
Congratulations on being older than me.
I've heard 9s are the best. No, I'm just kidding.
Whoa,
we're the peacemakers, even though I'm like throwing down fighting words, but
with me, so
yeah.
It's a friendly skirmish.
It's not the same thing. I'm a peacemaker. I'll avoid conflict at all costs. Don't come at me.
I will
1,
not.
Because I'm bigger than you, but 2, I will probably cry and run away.
I don't avoid conflict.
No, you do not. She doesn't go looking for it.
Yeah, it stresses me out.
But she will absolutely stand up for things, and I
usually for other people.
Not. Yeah. So, yes, I had a coaching call with somebody that I connected with last fall who decided she wanted to start kind of a coaching. I don't want to necessarily call it a business, but she wanted to have this coaching.
She wanted to help out
opportunity.
Authors with
I mean, it is
stuff.
something that she wanted to establish as somewhat of a side hustle for herself.
Oh, okay.
She's absolutely reasonably priced for it.
Okay. A business friendly to indie authors.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes. So,
still a business.
Just because it's a chunk of her time.
Yeah, for sure.
To spend
and
coaching you through this.
Information that she has gathered and developed. She's trained herself and she's learned a lot about it. Yeah. And
it's funny. I told her today that not only do I learn a lot about my characters when talking to her, I also end up learning more about myself and the people in my life who are whatever number that they are.
That tracks.
So I chatted with her back in October, I think, maybe, or November. I can't remember which.
I want to say it was October.
Yeah.
It was in the fall.
It was probably before I started Nano.
Yeah.
And that book that I wrote for Nano is the one that I did
I think by this point of releasing the episode, we will have revealed the title. Do you want to tell everybody what the title of this book is?
Your Mom.
It's not your mom. It's not. It continues to not be. That's a clip for the shorts right there. Do you want to tell people the title? Your Mom.
I have a problem. The camera turns on.
The camera turns her on.
Starts. The camera turns me on.
That's what I thought you were about to say.
Nope. The camera turns itself on. No, actually, we turn the camera on.
It's a really high-tech camera.
I get a little bit ridiculous. I'm a little bit ridiculous in life, but
about the same level of ridiculous when it's just you and me.
It feels like more concentrated.
I point it out more.
I feel like it's more concentrated because we're supposed to be taking this serious. Actually, not really.
No, we're not.
We want to be having fun.
Yes. We are having fun. If you could quit just fully hard knowing everything that I say as I say it.
It wasn't meant to go against what you were saying. I was just trying to be
just
funny.
Doing your bit again.
Just being funny.
You're hilarious.
Okay, just listen. So, the book is called Dun, 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 dun. Unborn Rising.
Yeah, and the series is called
Secrets of the Unborn.
And my book is called War of the Unborn, and that's book 2. And we're very excited. They're both releasing in September. We're gonna go real hard on review tours and whatnot. Anyway, Tracy wrote Unborn Rising for Nano.
I will say, I think part of the reason writing this story went as well as it did, and then my finished product with a first draft was so high level, it was kind of mind blowing.
It's really good.
So part of it was because this technically was a story that I had written years before, but we changed so much.
Yeah.
There are elements that are still the same. The basic premise is still the same, but otherwise the story changed a lot. The characterization changed a lot.
Like the world building didn't necessarily change as much. Was like, felt like you had a sketch of a landscape.
Yes.
And in the process of rewriting this one, and just, I don't want to step in it, but in our conversations about both books, feels like it became a full-on oil painting.
Yeah.
Picasso. Michelangelo.
Whoever paints things.
I mean, they both do. But
with oils.
Michelangelo.
Things.
Anyway.
I don't know enough about art or artists. I'm sorry.
We don't want it to be Picasso because then you don't know what the landscape looks like. Yeah, that's why I said Picasso.
Anyways, so I had this coaching call with her back in the fall, and she does Enneagram typing for characters. In one, I had gotten a little bit of knowledge on the Enneagram, so I had a really basic understanding of the different numbers, not all of them, mostly just the ones that my friends, and family
your
members.
People. No, that's accurate.
I was just expanding.
So just the 3 or 4 of the people that you know who have done them before.
Yeah. So, or the ones that I've pegged as certain numbers. Like I called my husband a mile away before he ever took the test. And then I made him take the test just so that I could be like, I knew it.
Sorry, I'm dying at you saying pegged and then talking about your husband.
I do that too.
Yeah.
So hi, honey. Anyways.
And that's our last episode.
There you go. There you go.
Your husband's like,
here you go,
no.
everybody. Here's a really awkward conversation about me and my husband's sex life. In case you didn't pick up on that. And it's not really. It's fine. Everybody be cool.
Let us return.
It's just a normal day. Reel it in, Cheyenne.
She absolutely started it.
I would not have said
just
anything
so anybody
about
is
pegging
curious.
and my husband, except that you brought it up.
They were back to back, and I was trying to hold it in. I tried.
That's what she said.
Damn it, Tracy.
So we had this phone call or video call, talked it out. I gave her the premise of the story, kind of what I was thinking about the two main characters, and we came up with an Enneagram and then did a deep dive on other factors, because there are a lot of facets to the Enneagram, more than just the surface level. I'm a 1, which is the rule follower, this thing, this, that, and the other thing. There's subtypes and wings that dictate kind of how you interact with the world.
Without being, and no offense to anybody who's a hard believer of horoscopes, I'm just not. It sort of reminded me of, like, I'm an Aries with a, like, Scorpio rising or whatever. It kind of reminds me of that method of, like, there's the main thing, but then there's also a ton of, like, subcategories and branches.
It's a cool thing, because then that leaves a lot of space for the individuality you experience. Like, I've seen personality tests like Myers-Briggs, and then you see temperament. I don't know what this one is called. It's like the 4 temperaments or something: phlegmatic,
Divergent,
melancholic.
Sorry, keep going.
Divergent. What are the other ones? Candor and no.
Yeah.
And that's like your temperament overall. Myers-Briggs is kind of how you interact with the world a little bit. And then there's a few others that kind of
they all kind of do different things. Love languages, etc.
They explain the complexity of a person's personality with multiple different avenues, whereas the Enneagram builds all of that into one concept.
Yeah.
So you have your main Enneagram number, because there's 9, and they draw it kind of as a circle. And then you have wings, which is your wing.
One's your next to.
Yeah,
so a 7 would be 6 and an 8.
Yeah, and I'm a 9, so it'd be an 8 and a 1. You are one or the other. So I'm a 9 wing 1, which means I'm a little bit more of a rule follower than just
kidding.
I'm certainly not a person who tells it like it is and can be really direct with people. And that's what an 8 would do.
That's true. Though I love that we have reached a point where you're a little bit more direct with me, I hope.
Yeah, I think when I'm in a deeper relationship with people where I'm like, you're not going anywhere, and having any kind of conflict arise that's going to be a continuous problem, I don't let it slide forever. Yeah. Whereas I will let it slide with most other people.
Yeah, that's fair. That goes back to...
And it's about respecting my relationships and the person versus... otherwise I just avoid the conflict
avoidance. Yeah.
But it takes a lot for me to get to the point where I will actually say something to someone about whatever they're doing or saying that's bothersome. So, and that can be a 1 trait as well. Because my husband is a 1 and my best friend is an 8, and they have some similarities.
And her other best friend is a 7.
It is true. I'm guessing you're probably a wing 8. Is what I would
probably you think so?
I do think so.
I don't know what 6s are, so...
We'll go deeper in that later.
Anyways,
all that to say...
That's what she said.
I had a 2.5...
This is an appropriate podcast today, guys. Real appropriate stuff happening over here.
I talked about my husband. It's appropriate that those things happen with my husband. It's fine. It's that's what she said.
You brought it up again this time.
I did. I'm just saying. Anyways.
So character development.
Yes. So character development. I had this 2.5, 3 hour conversation with her, Enneagram typing my characters, and then deep diving into the subcategories and other things that really play a role in a character's motivation.
Yes. And I think that's going to be the sticking point for where that blends in with any other kind of character creation, character development. If you don't have the motivation behind what your character's doing, and not even just your main characters, you need to have the motivation of what your bad guys are doing and what your side characters are doing. You don't have to do full personality files for them.
Unless some people need that.
Yeah, it depends on the kind of story you're writing and the kind of writer that you are. For example, with Hope and Lies, I have a cajillion side characters.
She has a lot of characters.
I would not do Enneagrams for all of them, but I automatically know what some of them... Like, Jane's an 8, for sure.
Right, yeah. Well, and that's the thing, too, is, like, once it becomes more natural, you can kind of, and I feel like you do this anyway without knowing an actual label for them. You're like, this character is like this and this is their motivation. And
Yeah,
you
for
stick
sure.
with that unless you don't have a good sense of your character, which I've been in that place before. I'm like, I'm not really sure. And
Which is where something like this really comes in helpful. It's
I
not
used to
something
be
that you
much more
have
of a
to do.
discovery writer, and sometimes I like the process of learning about my character as the story unfolds and then going back and kind of fleshing that out a little bit more. Because we talked about that in our plotter versus pantser. There's also plotzer. Plotzer is also a thing.
We plotzed the Love is Murder.
That's a little bit more of what I do. I'm between a pantser and a plotzer.
I feel like I'm slowly reeling you in towards planner.
Only because you take my notes for me.
Oh, I take your notes for you. And for both books that you're writing for this Unborn series, went and did character analysis for both of them of like hardcore finding out what the two main characters. There's always the two main characters of hers because it's always romantic in some way. Of finding out what these two main characters, again, their motivations and their personalities and how they're going to play off of each other.
So there are tons of resources for
there's
developing characters.
Lots of free resources online, folks.
So many. There's like there are character interview sheets. There are questionnaires that you can ask yourself to build a character from scratch.
Yeah.
I have always hated those.
Yeah, I've never found them all that helpful, and I think is just because by the time I've started writing something, because I am a planner, for those of you who've listened to that, I plan a lot. I have my characters just fully ready to go. Like they're built 3-dimensional full people in my head before I even start writing. That being said, I think like doing Enneagram for Oliver in this Unborn book that I'm writing, you and I were chatting about it via text the other day because I had just finally figured out a little piece of him that was like, this is gonna fully make him a person.
Yeah.
He was a little bit more of a not a prop, a tool for the main character.
Yeah.
A little bit more of like a set piece for my main character.
Which sometimes happens with side characters.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain level of skill that you have that even if you don't do this kind of a deep dive on some of your side characters, none of them feel like they're flat, even if they are just something to prop up elements of the story.
That's super sweet.
And so when I'm reading yours, I'm not reading him as like he doesn't feel like a fake person or like he doesn't
He doesn't feel like he's only there to advance part of the plot.
Right. He doesn't feel entirely like that. Like I felt like you thought that partly because you didn't feel like you had a sense of him. Whereas like when I started writing Unborn and I had done the Enneagram for both of these characters, I was able to do the deep dive on both of them and build them to a point where I knew him so well and how he played off of my main character.
Yeah, and the way they play off of each other is very good, by the way. Yeah, and I think that's where I am for like Miss Bell's travel guides, the next two that I have set up, all of that. The Abravia series.
I'll say that a lot of times when I write stories, I will have like an inkling of a character, of how they say something, and it just gives you this sort of feeling or view of that characterization. But this book and my Love Undercover, which released in February, I did the Enneagram for her too. I actually didn't do it for Chase.
I don't think you needed to. Fully didn't need to.
I probably if I sat down and analyzed, I probably could figure out what his number was, but I didn't have that background for him. But it really helped me make her very unique and quirky in the way that I wanted her to be. But those were the only two books I've ever consciously done with the Enneagram in mind.
Yeah.
Because I didn't
Which
know
makes
much
sense because it's kind of a new thing for you also.
Yes, it really is. But I will say, so if you like sort of the challenge of building a character from the ground up, there's tons of resources to help you with that. But if you like this is what I've liked about doing the Enneagram for building my characters. It gives me a basis of like, this is generally what a 7 looks like. and then you can characterize them very uniquely by playing off those elements of their character.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you a jumping off point. And I really liked that. And so when I did another call with her today, and to build my next story in the Unborn series, to really get a sense of these characters. And the other thing that made it super cool was because I identified their numbers and their subtypes and their wings and some of those things. It illuminated parts of the plot that were out of my reach until that point, where I'm like, now I have a much more solid plot to work with because I have much more solid characters. And I will say, because I'm a character-driven writer.
Characters driving the plot is generally, in my experience, both reading and writing, leads to better stories. Because if you have plot coming first, and it's like, cool, now the characters have to do this, otherwise they won't get to this point in the plot.
Versus then you have trouble making their actions make sense.
Yeah, exactly.
For their character.
Exactly. I was going to say, let's do a real quick run through of the ones that you know just off the top of your head, so people sort of have an idea, because we've talked a lot about what Enneagram itself, but we haven't really gone into like, I mean, they know what it is, but not what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's start with one, and just, I know you're not fluent in all of them, but let's go through the ones that you do know pretty well. And just a little thing of like, I know 7 is like wanderlust and adventure and like pushing boundaries, which is me to a T.
Yeah. So
start with 1. Sorry. I don't know why I decided to jump, just because I'm 7.
Well, because you're a 7. Let me find.
I am a 7.
Nope.
Yeah, this is the first one that I've done that I felt like it actually made sense. And I'll probably sit and do it another 2 or 3 times. It's a lot of questions just to see if.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing where even if you don't want to do like a consultation with somebody, or you fully just, you're looking at the list and you're like, I don't know where my character would land on this. That's part of the beauty of having the whole list of questions, is you can just supplant your consciousness, replace it with your characters, and go and do the questionnaire from the POV of your character. I will also say, while Tracy's looking stuff up here, that it's a good tool for D&D also, if you're trying to figure out your D&D character and sort of flesh them out a little bit. Yeah, truly any kind of character creation. It's a useful, and again, it's not a requirement. It's not a necessity. It is a useful tool.
It's a useful tool. I also have found a lot of benefit understanding myself by learning what it is.
Yeah. I know a mutual friend of ours who's also a writer did the test, and she's a 2. And she has found that to be incredibly helpful in terms of how she, what am I trying to say? When you get to 2s, it'll make a little bit more sense, but severe like conflict avoidance, saying yes to everything, and therefore not having time for yourself, and being afraid to say no to people, and her knowing that about herself has helped her go, no, I'm not going to overbook myself this weekend. I'm going to actually give myself time to have me time. And because I know that about myself, I'm able to do that.
And it's so 2s and 9s are really similar. And I would be like, wait, am I a 2? But the things that I've learned about being a 9 has really helped me be okay with the way that I am when other people find me frustrating. Other people, as in my husband, who's like, why can't you just say no? And why can't you say when something's bothering you, or whatever it is? And me feeling like there was something wrong with me. And so identifying
it's just different personality types. Yeah.
And being like, now I can accept that and be okay with it. Like, that's super helpful. So I have here the Enneagram and their titles, essentially the names. So 1 is a perfectionist, reformer, improver, and they avoid anger, apparently. But one of the
okay, my husband's not a 1.
I don't know that mine is necessarily either, or I mean that the anger thing is a thing. That's something.
Yeah.
anyways, I think their whole thing about being controlling and following the rules and making sure everything stays perfect is how they avoid anger.
Oh,
but then
I
when
see.
those things, like my husband would always talk about, he's like, I have this high tolerance for things, but I hit this threshold and then I explode.
Yeah.
And that's for sure the way my husband is. And it's very much this black and white, like there is a right way and a wrong way. And if you're doing it the wrong way, I have a problem with
Yeah,
you.
and that was the thing that makes me think mine is also one is the high standards for other people.
That high standards for themselves and other people.
Because
like
I'm over here going
to a high standard, but they get really upset when other people.
Yeah, when it's like I put in all of this effort and I am doing things the right way, the way I was like.
That sounds exactly like something my husband would say.
Military, like just for mine's in the military, just military husband wise, like I do the training and I know what I'm supposed to do and I do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And these people who don't are making it harder for everybody else. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, you're a one. I'm gonna make you some muffins.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then they can be really critical, especially when they're in a place of stress.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that kind of that play there. So that's the one, and is so the perfectionist.
Fully just talking about that real quick. For characters, obviously, I think it's clear how that's helpful.
They're leaders. They're natural leaders that way too.
I think it's obvious how that is helpful for characters. Mm-hmm. How that is helpful for individuals. If, like, for example, our husbands actually did the tests themselves and looked at the results themselves and went, oh, I am highly critical when I'm stressed. Yeah. And that maybe
Which my husband did do, and we've talked about that. And now I can approach him and be like, you're being really critical of me right now.
Yeah, is there something
wrong? The way
wrong?
You're saying something to me.
Yeah.
Like, even if we even had this conflict just the other night, and I was like, the way you said it.
Yeah.
Whether you said it directly to my face
for anybody who doesn't agree,
not, but you're muttering under your breath or saying it the way that you did was absolutely a critical.
Coming at me with a tone that is not respectful.
Yep.
Yeah. And which we all do.
Yes.
We're not sitting here being like, we're always nice to our husbands.
Well, and the thing was, he said the thing that came out very critical sounding, even though it wasn't super directed at me, being like, he wasn't like, you didn't do the thing. It was like, well, it should have been done. And then I reacted in a certain way. So then I got in trouble for being sassy at him. And then he got in trouble for snapping at me after that. Like those kinds of things and understanding.
Yeah. It's good for relationships.
There's also some, there's a website that has a list of the different Enneagram numbers in relationship with each other, which is really fascinating because then you can see
here's where these two might bump heads.
Yes,
here's
they're
where
not
these
like
two
these
get
ones
along.
match the best. It's the pros of these
like
numbers
I can't
being
date
together,
you. I'm a Gemini.
And then the pros of these two numbers being together and the cons are like the areas where you're doing each other some good, and then areas where you perhaps are having conflict.
Yeah, maybe analyze this and see this is why you're having this conflict.
And when I read the description of a 1 with a 9, it was really accurate for how our relationship dynamic is, but we do really well together because my husband is also on top of being a 1 in all these ways, but he's also very willing to hear my feedback.
Which is why we married them.
Yes.
Because mine is also good at hearing feedback. We do like a once weekly in the evening little, like as we're getting ready for bed. And it's not like a set day or something, but we'll take turns, and it averages like once a week where we just look at each other and we're like, hey, is there anything that I'm doing or that I could be like improving in what I'm doing, either around the house or with our relationship or with the kids?
Welcome to the Marriage Help Podcast.
Yeah, this is a new podcast.
New portion.
I did say we were wives in the intro.
We did.
I did say
there
that.
Are things, but all that to say, it is helpful for characterization and for relationship.
Yes.
Cheyenne and I understand each other a lot better now because we know these things about each other. Like when I'm like, I'm a 9, I don't like making decisions, not because I'm afraid to make the decision, but I literally don't care. So when she sometimes starts to be like, can you like decide? I'm like, I don't want to, please make the decision. She's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then if it's a thing where I'm having anxiety over making a decision, I'll just be like, hey, I know you don't care, so pick one.
Yeah.
Because then I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Or, that stress you get when you're like, I have to pick where we're going to eat, but what if she doesn't like the food that I pick? No part of me is worried about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we've talked about it, and I'm like...
And I'm like, it causes me more stress
if I'm like, can you please decide? Yeah.
Because literally, and this is what I said to my husband.
This is why I do all of our merchandise.
Because he also had issues when he was like, I feel like you don't care. And I'm like, I don't care in the sense that, like, the process of getting to that point doesn't matter to me. The thing itself does matter to me, but it just looks like it doesn't because I'm not overly...
Versus me, who truly, oldest child, lightly matriarch of the family, I make decisions, and I have made decisions for myself and my sister, and for myself and my sister since I was 12, and then for myself and everyone around me since I was like 14, 15, 16. And so I don't know if that's necessarily something that I would have taken on willingly, but because I was in that, because that's something that I grew up with that like was a very developmental time of like, it's Cheyenne's gonna make choices.
And now we're into the portion of childhood trauma.
No. I don't even think it was true. I think it was,
well, there's a lot of that stuff plays a role in how we develop the way that
exactly,
we do. Yeah. Because there are, it's the nature versus nurture thing. It's always both.
It's always both. There are people sitting here going, can we please hear what the characterization fucking 2 is? Okay, sorry.
2 is the helper. They're a giver and a nurturer. So they avoid their own needs a lot of the time. So these are the people who are always going to offer to make you meals, help you clean, set up, do all the
point blank refuse a meal train because they don't want to bug you.
And to the point where they're entirely neglecting themselves. And this is where some of the things where the 9 and 2 kind of, they get in between where I'm like, am I a 2? Because I do offer to help and sometimes do it
and never
to
ask
my
for
own
it.
detriment, and I never ask for help. But there are still a lot more in the 9 category that I tend to identify with.
Yeah.
So then there's the 3.
Wait, was that it for 2?
There's more to it than that, I suppose.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to be expedient.
That's true. I'm sorry.
We spent a lot of time talking about ones because we're intimately acquainted with them. That was not meant to be like that, but Cheyenne took it there.
What?
Literally intimately acquainted with them. Okay. 3 is the achiever, performer, succeeder, and they avoid worthlessness. So these are your people who are like super driven, super high achieving, they're successful CEOs, they get stuff done, and they're very into how people see them. That is not your husband. They care about other people's. They care about other people's opinions. That's why it's not your husband.
That's true.
They very much care about.
It's just edging a 3 or whatever it's called.
They're that one's not. There's like triads where you're like there's ones that you're connected to. And ones are not connected to 3.
Anyway, okay, so that's 3 is high. So for example, if you're writing a billionaire romance,
your billionaire is probably a 3.
Jinx. And then the love interest is probably a 2 because that's usually how those stories go. Continue.
That can be true. I feel like sometimes they're 7s. To kind of loosen
I suppose it depends. It depends on the... If it's a rescue one, she's a 2.
See, this is why it's so fascinating because you can play around with this thing. So then there's 4. They're the individualist. They're romantic. They're artistic. And they avoid ordinariness. So they're the kind of people who want to be seen as different, set apart, unique.
That's my sister.
They're kind of obsessed with that almost to an extent where they're like... If I'm not, I'm doing something wrong. They're very dreamer, head in the clouds.
Oh, that's my sister.
That kind of thing. Like they're not always so flighty, I guess, but they can be pragmatic, but they also are very much like it's important to them to stand out.
Yeah, and that's not all. Again, there's going to be aspects of all of these that do not fully.
Yes.
You can't dress somebody down and be like, you're every single bullet point.
Can be a 4-wing 3. So they could have that side of them where they care very much about success and are driven.
Yeah.
And
in a dreamlike state of like, I'm driven. I don't want to be a CEO. I want to be a famous rock star.
Right.
Which
so
is
you
that.
have, that's
Yeah.
where these wings come in. There's also subtypes, which is a whole other thing that I'm still just now learning about.
Cool. We'll do an episode on that another time.
So you have 5 is the investigator. They're a thinker, observer, and they avoid being useless. So these are the ones who are very much like, they do all their own research. They won't take your opinion as anybody's opinion as fact until they do all their own research and come to their own conclusions. They don't trust anything until they've investigated it. They're a little more aloof and
Sherlock
standoffish.
Holmes.
Could be, yeah. They are, they find it useless sometimes to be in relationship with people that they don't get something out of. And also, like, they're a little bit less relational in the sense that they, it goes back to that uselessness. If that person is not sharpening them, or they are not,
if it's not advancing like my life.
Yes. So
got it.
My brother tested as a 9, but I'm 100% certain he's a 5. He's very much the kind of person who's like, because we avoid 9s avoid conflict. My brother doesn't avoid conflict just for the sake of keeping peace. He avoids telling people like it is because he's like,
it's you're not worth my time.
It's not worth arguing with you about because I'm not going to change your mind. And
Maybe
he
my
researches everything.
A 5.
He very much could be. Okay. I could see that.
All right. 6.
So 6 is the loyalist. So they are a troubleshooter, a questioner, and they avoid insecurities. So they're much higher anxiety people. When you get into relationship with them, like once you're in, but it takes a little bit before they accept you in. They don't like their world being shifted too much. They like stability. They like,
okay. I think I know somebody who's a 6.
Yeah. I have 3 pretty close friends who are 6s. So there's that.
7s.
7s.
We're speed running the rest of these. Shiny. Hi.
The enthusiast.
Sup, babe?
She's an adventurer. She's optimistic, and she avoids pain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the kind of person, they're a little bit dreamy in the 4 sense. They come up with lots of ideas. They're kind of grandiose, and they're like, I'm so excited about this plan. And they go full tilt into said plan with all the enthusiasm and optimism that the world can hold.
I'm jumping train tracks constantly.
Yes.
And we'll get into that little inside thing another time.
They are a little bit ADHD-ish seeming. Because
I think I probably have ADHD.
They kind of jump from topic to topic. They can be a little bit chaotic in certain areas of their life.
Listen, my notes make sense to me, okay? Mm-hmm. I know where to find things.
So
nobody else does.
There's your 7. Basically, it was like, maybe we should start a podcast. And then 2 seconds later, we had one because Cheyenne is enthusiastic.
You said it, and then I went full tilt.
She sure did. So then you have your 8. 8s can be tough.
Your best friend's an 8.
They are challengers. They're protectors and mavericks, and they avoid weakness. So their whole thing, you would know an 8. There are some that are like just so obvious to you.
It's kind of like up there with a 5 in terms of avoiding like uselessness.
Yeah, kind of. Their whole thing is their focus is control. Like, I have to be able to control myself and my world. They can be very abrasive and very straightforward. So sometimes they can rub people the wrong way because they're just like, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm being honest with you. And that actually is a form of respect.
Yeah.
In their eyes. So they can be pretty confrontational because they're like, I don't care what you think
because
of me.
This isn't confrontation. I'm just telling you the truth.
Well, and they're like, I don't care what you think of me, and this thing needs to be said. And I have a lot of...
A useful friend to have.
Yes.
But not if you're wondering how your outfit looks.
And also, I mean, I'm okay with that. But if you're a 9, it can be hard because you avoid conflict, and they're very much like, I'll hit that head on. Yeah. You know? So...
That's what she said.
So that's an 8, and that's my best friend. And I love her to death.
Mm-hmm.
And she calls it like it is. Yeah. And thankfully, most of the time, not at me because that stresses me out. But I love her ability to do that.
It's an impressive feat to have if you are someone who does not enjoy that.
Mm-hmm.
If you're someone who finds that uncomfortable,
mm-hmm.
It's impressive to look at somebody and be like, you could just say that to people?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's magic to me.
I'm learning how to do that a little bit more.
kind of love it
Yeah.
and wish that I had a little bit more of that in me. I don't. And then there's the 9. And that
Tracy.
is the peacemaker, mediator, and the negotiator.
Mm-hmm.
We avoid conflict. So there's a lot of that willingness to jump in and help and do these things for people because I just don't want people to dislike me or to have a conflict with me. That also means I'm very open to hearing people's opinions, and I don't express mine very firmly.
You were saying something about, I don't remember which number. Y'all probably know better than I do at this point. You were saying something about one of them being a researcher. I feel
5.
like, so here's the thing, right? We're going to wrap it up pretty soon here, but as you're listing these off, I'm hearing pieces of you and me and your husband and my kids and everybody in multiples.
Yes.
Right? We're not sitting here being like, if you're this, then you're this, and that's what it is.
That's not how it works.
We are not in the world of Divergent.
Yes. So that's why when you look at an Enneagram circle.
It's a circle. It's low-key pentagrammy. Okay.
A little bit. It has arrows, and you usually have kind of a triad and on top of your wings. So I'm a wing 1, but my triad, I think, goes to 3 and 6. Yeah. So
it's Enneagram is what the word is for a 9-sided star. Well, I was trying to look it up to be like, it's not a pentagram. It's
there you go.
Turns out it's an Enneagram. That is literally what it means.
Well, now our minds have been expanded. So there you go. But yeah, there's a lot of things. You also, in stress and in health, you switch. So like in growth areas, you switch to a certain number where you're doing the positive things of that number. And in stress, you go to another number
to do negative
and you
things.
behave their negative things of that number.
How fun.
So there's a whole world with that because you have how those numbers interact with each other and how they might react to each other.
Yeah.
At what kinds of conflicts you might run into when you have these numbers together. So you can play around with it so much, and there are so many of them with the wing aspect of it.
There's a lot of
just
connections.
gives you a really good basis to build off of. Where you're like, okay, this is the basis of the personality. Now I can build their interests and their this and their this. And it just gives a rich backstory without as much of the ground up effort, which I really appreciate because I like to hit the ground running and I don't like to spend a lot of time having to do those things because I just want to go.
And this is the sort of thing where as you're writing a story, you hit the halfway mark and you have a good idea of your characters, right? Say you didn't do any prep, but you have a good idea of your characters and you're like, cool, I would like to add to this. I would like to build this a little bit so they're even richer and even deeper and even stronger characters. It's a really good tool. It's a really good tool to build one. It's a really good tool to have an already created, fully fleshed out character and go, awesome. How do I make this more?
Yes.
And it's also a good tool for your personal life.
You have these levels of this is their tendencies to behave, but you have the things they avoid can really help you build a motivation in the story.
Again, motivation is really important.
What are they trying to avoid in this scenario?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's an outside concept that people have tried to build in. I've read a lot of things where what's the one thing your character is trying to accomplish and then put things in the way of that. But if you're looking at also not just what are they trying to accomplish, but what are they trying to avoid? And this is very typical of this number is I'm trying to, for me personally as a 9, or if I were writing a 9 character,
conflict.
We're avoiding conflict. So we're going to
decision making.
We're going to do whatever is going to keep the peace in our environment. And that sometimes is how you handle people, and sometimes that's how you handle situations. And so you can play around with that in any sort of genre you're looking at. And I find that more compelling than the plot itself at times.
Yeah, for sure. It also, is helpful for what you said for doing it for your main characters, finding out their motivation, what they want, and also what they want to avoid. It's also helpful for your bad guys. If you know what your bad guys want, it's automatically, for the most part, going to be at odds with what your character wants, which means that's probably what your character's trying to avoid. And that's it's just a fun thing to juggle. It's fun to just lay it all out on a table and look at the picture that it paints, that you've got all these different characters and stuff. Folks, we yet again have to hurriedly wrap it up because we hit the 45-minute mark on my little thing. It'll be less than that after I cut all the laughter at the beginning. Folks, thank you so much for listening. We hope this has been a useful episode, if not our dirtiest one so far.
You're welcome.
It's not going to get cleaner. Heads up.
We're not going to clean it up.
It's not going to get clean. No, I mean, the future episodes are not going to be any cleaner.
That too.
Then that's what she said in Peggy.
That's cool.
Thank you so much. Head over to the Patreon for our after show, The Epilogue, if you feel like checking that out. We have a couple different tiers.
Comment, subscribe, give us questions that you have if you want to dive into this topic more.
Yeah.
I would love to, and maybe we could even have Adrian on.
Oh, that would be great.
It would be really cool. So definitely let us know if this is something you want to go more in depth.
I have an idea on what
Make sure you tell us we're pretty.
Yeah, I have an idea on what our epilogue should be for this one, and it's me just throwing famous characters at you and having you pick which Enneagram you are.
That would be fun and also stresses me out because I don't know enough about it, but I would love to try.
Yeah, we're going to do that. That's going to be the epilogue. Head over to Patreon and check it out. We got to go. Thank you so much. Tell us you're pretty. Have a wonderful whatever time of year this comes out.
Okay, love you. Bye.
Okay, love you. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in. For more and to check out our after show, The Epilogue, head over to patreon.com/Barski-Lyn Adventures. We'll see you next time.